This is the Cats Roundtable with John Catsimatidis.
Everywhere around the world, they come to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they come to America.
Good morning, America. This is the Cats Roundtable. John Catsimatidis here. We have one great show for you today. We have the EPA Chief, Lee Zeldin. Dr. Peter Michalos, live long and prosper. Chairman Jason Smith from Ways and Means Committee. Governor Scott Walker. Steve Moore, how well is the economy going? Drea Humphrey on what's happening with the ostriches in Canada. General Jack Keane. And let's start off with the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton. With us today is Jay Clayton, the U.S. Attorney in charge of the Southern District of New York. Jay, it was good to see you Tuesday morning at the State of the NYPD breakfast hosted by the Commissioner, Jessica Tisch, and she gave some speech.
John, I couldn't agree more. It's great to see you there. It was great to see so many people there to support the NYPD and Commissioner Tisch. And I will tell you, the speech was so substantive. You know, what have they done in the last year to really get violent crime in New York way down, and not just resting on their laurels, but talking about what they're going to do going forward, including the discussion of modernizing some of the processes. And Commissioner Tisch goes way back in the police department. She's been responsible for many of what I would say the advances in use of technology while respecting people's rights. I mean, she just I was so impressed, John, and I think we're so lucky to have the NYPD, and we're lucky to have great leadership at the NYPD.
Jay, you're the U.S. Attorney in charge of the Southern District of New York, and traditionally the most powerful one in the country. Tell us what other things are happening to help make New York a better place to live.
Well, one of them is cleaning up corruption in New York. And I will tell you that this week we arrested former New York City police leader on corruption. And I just want to say there's no place for corruption in our police department. And Commissioner Tisch and the leadership of the police department is 100% committed to that, from what I can tell. And so I appreciate that. We're also, we've cleaned up some corruption in the New York City Housing Authority. We're looking at other institutions in New York. And I'm not talking about petty stuff, John. I'm talking about making sure that anybody who is in leadership or near leadership in these institutions and is a bad actor is brought to justice. Because 99% of our public servants in New York are good people who really care. And they want us to clean that up. So that's something that we've been focusing on. We had some action this week, and I appreciate the support of New Yorkers, and I appreciate the support of these New York institutions in making sure that if we have any bad apples, we're taking care of that. And another thing, we had a gang trial this week, with homicides and, just the kind of behavior that we can't tolerate. And there were efforts to intimidate people. And my prosecutors, they didn't waver an inch. They delivered the goods for the people of New York and secured a guilty verdict. And people should know we are not going to be intimidated. The gangs are not going to intimidate us. The people of New York do not want us to be intimidated. In fact, they want us to face intimidation with even greater strength.
When you talk about intimidation, there was we scratch our heads sometimes of things that happened down. It's not your territory in El Paso, where there were threats of drones coming in, et cetera, and they had to shut down that airport. Things like that happen in the Northeast.
One of the things that we need to up our game on is being ready for drone threats. I've actually spoken in some detail with the commissioner about this. We have many big events coming to New York this year. We have America 250. We have the World Cup. The world is going to be watching New York, and we need to be ready for threats like that. It's a reality of today, and it's a new technology. We need to respond and to be ready to combat any kind of nefarious drone activity.
Commissioner did speak about that to learn how to protect ourselves better against drones, which brings up one last subject. The fact is that President Trump on these windmills on the Atlantic coast, because whether it's Long Island or whether it's Staten Island, that these windmills, besides being having their own problems, they can reduce the ability of radar to pick up drones coming through that system.
Well, John, I'm going to
put... Has it been on your desk yet?
That has not been on my desk as a prosecutor, but I'm going to put my old SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, disclosure hat on. And these things were financed with a blind eye toward their total cost. That's just me knowing about investments and knowing about we were sold a bill of goods on some ESG investments. And the windmills offshore, to me, and I'm speaking now as a citizen informed by my time in the markets, this was one of the craziest things in terms of ignoring all of the potential costs and buying a bill of goods on what are turning out to be illusory benefits. We should all take a lesson from this windmill experiment.
Well, I've learned lessons like that when we used to buy copying machines, and then they would finance them through a leasing company. And when the copying machines didn't work, the copying machine company would say, "Well, we sold that paper to a bank. We have nothing to do with it anymore."
Yeah, and your copy machine became a coffee table because it wasn't good for anything else.
It's part of the con game, and I understand that possibly one of the countries in Europe were involved where they own a large portion of the company doing the deal. And when you talk about those windmills, because I know it's important to President Trump, is the fact that even though they guarantee you 10 years worth of life, the blades fall off after 5 or 6 years, some of them. And I've been told that it could cost the New York consumer or the American consumer 200-300% more for electricity than it's costing now.
John, now I'm going to put my prosecutorial hat back on and talk about white-collar crime and how we look for it. One of the places you look most is when somebody gets paid up front and the customer has to deal with it over the next 10 years. And I'm always wary of the guy that walks away with all the dollars on year one, and then the customer is left with all the maintenance for 10 years.
Well, I will fill you in on what I know, and I'm sure Secretary Burgum can fill you in on that. It's a major problem for New York City and New Jersey, but New Jersey is a different prosecutorial area, but the cost of electricity could go up anywhere from 200 to 300%.
That's not what we want.
Jay Clayton, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, thank you so much for the job you do, and thank you for protecting all New Yorkers and all Americans, and let's catch up again real soon.
Thank you, John.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is the EPA Administrator, Lee Zeldin. American businesses are going to save $1.3 trillion. Lee, you and President Trump told everybody about it Thursday night and expounded on it on Friday, and also the inflation rates came down tremendously. Tell us about our economy. Tell us about how we're going to save businesses $1.3 trillion.
Well, so many aspects of our economy are heading in the right direction. The announcement that was made this past Thursday with President Trump at the White House amounts to the largest act of deregulation in the history of the United States of America by far. We're talking $1.3 trillion. We're talking about a new vehicle costing American families $2,400 less because of this decision. What we announced was a repeal of the 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding, all of the greenhouse gas emission standards that followed on light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles, and an elimination on all off-cycle credits, including that universally despised start-stop feature that are on cars that make your car die at every red light and stop sign. It was a big announcement, and the endangerment finding was used by the Obama and Biden administrations for trillions of dollars of regulations on not just mobile sources, but stationary sources, oil and gas, also airplanes, trillions of dollars. And Supreme Court decisions that have come out in recent years made it very clear we have to apply the best reading of the law, that the major policy doctrine says that these big decisions should be made by Congress, not rogue unelected bureaucrats and federal agencies. So this is about following the letter of the law, the rule of law, and making the right decision for American taxpayers and American consumers. So it was a very big announcement on Thursday.
And that eventually brings down prices of goods even more if American businesses don't have to worry about those extra costs.
Absolutely. And in so many different respects, the U.S. auto industry has seen so many benefits from President Trump's policies. And we see it across so many different sectors. President Trump did an event on Wednesday with the coal industry. We're seeing new pipeline projects that are being advanced. We're new nuclear facilities that are being built. It's just a really exciting time to lift federal overreach, to be able to empower American consumers, American families, American businesses to all be able to survive, thrive, prosper. But you just take the auto industry. There's the announcement that I just referenced. There's the announcement that was made with Secretary Duffy and President Trump to reset CAFE standards. There was the Congressional Review Act that President Trump signed into law that got rid of California's electric vehicle mandates. There are all the announcements of these auto manufacturers investing billions of dollars in the U.S., which helps in so many respects, including more American jobs. So all these policies, they really add up. And the president's been firing on all cylinders here. And it has all of his government, whole of government approach to bring all of our power to bear to help strengthen this country as much as possible.
Besides all the responsibilities you have with the EPA, the president gave you a second job to find out what the heck is going on in California, because 12,000 homes burnt down and they only issued a few permits. Can you give the American people an update on that?
I was in Los Angeles last week. We have our team on the ground. I'm going to be heading back to LA here shortly. And what started as an effort of President Trump directing his agencies when he first came into office to do our jobs as quickly as possible. Now, a year later, because of the president's frustration with the pace of the rebuilding, he has directed me to help break through local logjams, non-federal logjams, whether it's other levels of government, it's outside of government. I'm not just focused on what EPA's conventional, traditional equity and tasks would be. We did an amazing job. It was the agency's largest wildfire cleanup. When I first came in, we were under a 30-day deadline that the president had set for us to complete our Phase 1 hazardous material removal so that the Army Corps can come in and do their Phase 2 debris removal. We got our job done, and Army Corps got their job done, and Small Business Administration came in and gave out over $3 billion. Half of their disaster loans in 2025 went to L.A. But now at this point, a year later, the president says, you know what? Instead of just having his agencies doing everything in our power with our conventional, traditional roles, now we need to break through local logjams, and we've already made tremendous progress. And we're working with the city, we're working with the county, we're working with local homeowners, residents, businesses. We've already seen the results quickly, and we're going to keep this pace up until this job gets done.
What else would you like to tell the American people?
Yeah, I mean, so much is going well. I mean, the president campaigned on so many different issues that he's following through and delivering on. You're talking about the economy, and we're seeing in so many different ways the strength of our economy with different reports that have been coming out, different metrics that people follow. And as each day, week, month goes by, more of those positive benefits end up being felt by Americans. We see the president delivering on his promise to secure our border, and the level that has been accomplished has been incredible. The effort that he's been focused on to help make our streets safer, the work to deregulate, like we were talking about here earlier in this interview. There's so much that the president was talking about on the trail that he has been working every single day so hard for Americans to follow through on. It's an honor to be part of his cabinet. It's an honor to be able to do my part, working with him, working with the rest of the team to make America proud and to fulfill these promises, these pledges, these commitments to the American public.
Well, Lee Zeldin, thank you for everything you do and the rest of the team. And let's catch up again real soon.
Yes, sir. Have a great Sunday.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. Dr. Peter Michalos, live long and prosper. What items do you have for us today?
Well, today we're going to talk about something really fascinating and very important to our longevity. And basically, the Earth's crust turns out to be similar in our bodies and our bloodstream, the same elements and minerals that are found in the crust of the Earth, the nitrogen, the magnesium, the hydrogen, the calcium, the carbon, the phosphorus. They are all similar to what we have in our bloodstream and in our tissues. So we really are what comes out of the soil. And also, the soil has its own microbiome. And basically, every teaspoon of soil has 1 billion bacteria. And I mean, that's like hard to even imagine. And our gut has 100 trillion microorganisms, and 38 trillion of them are bacteria. And we have 5,000 different bacterial species that live in our gut, and that basically is involved in the digestion of food and our immunity. So the relationship between our soil and what we eat and who we are is just totally, completely fascinating. So what we eat is very important, but what comes out of the earth and what comes out of the soil is the most important things to eat. And the way we handle our food and prepare our food, we're learning more and more about longevity. For example, we now know that when man touches oils, and we have all these seed oils, they are toxic and they cause a lot of problems, including our central belly abdominal fat is associated with seed oils, like all these vegetable oils and cottonseed oils. They're bad for us. And it turns out that the temperatures that we cook the oils and how we treat these things from nature, like avocado oil has what's called a smoking point of 520 degrees. So you don't want to cook it that hot. Olive oil, which has oleic acid, which turns on our longevity genes, and that one we want to not cook it above 465 degrees. And we want cold-pressed olive oil. And the last one that we can use is coconut oil, which is around 465 smoking point. Because once it smokes, it changes the oil and it's not healthy anymore. So the ideal temperature when we cook and prepare things is 350 to 375 degrees when we're sauteing things and baking things. And we want to avoid man-made margarine because it turns out that causes great problems. Another way we
Doctor,
treat
does
things
that
from
mean if people think they're healthy and they put 3 eggs in a frying pan and put olive oil in it thinking it's healthy, if the frying pan goes above that degree temperature, is that a problem?
Yeah, it is. The whole trick is you slow heat. When you make it smoke, then it's no good. So you never bring it up to a temperature where it's smoked. That's called the smoking point. And the same thing with meats and hamburgers and hot dogs and bacon. We now know when people their burnt bacon and burnt well-done meat, It produces nitrosamines, which are known to have carcinogenic compounds in it called PAHs. They're called polycystic aromatic hydrocarbons, and those things now have been proven to be associated with cancer. So those are one of the things, if you can have an option, avoid burnt bacon, burnt meat, or things that, even barbecue, you got to peel that black stuff, the burnt stuff on there. That's all carcinogenic, and we now know that. So you need to protect against that. And also the things that we cook in, for example, aluminum pans, the utensils. Aluminum seems to have an association possibly with Alzheimer's, and some people think it competes with the things like lithium orotate, which has been found to be protective in the brain. They found that the amyloid plaque in Alzheimer's patients sucks up all the good lithium orotate that's healthy for the brain. We now know that the cutting boards we use, wooden cutting boards, flourish bacteria because they have all these micro crevices. I've purchased a titanium cutting board, much easier to clean, doesn't hold on to any bacteria, and it turns out that that may be healthier and less risk of contamination, just like a lot of people who do chickens on their counter and on cutting boards. It holds on to bacteria, and there's many cases of people getting food poisoning from things like that. So these are some of the things that you can do to help protect our bodies against the toxicities. But good soil is very important. A big study out of China showed that the people where there were belts of areas with centenarians, where people were living 100, there was lower altitude mountainous areas with clean oil, clean soil, clean air, and the clean water. And those belts in China, they found, had a whole bunch of people living over 100 years old. So we now know that a lot of our stripped soil, like filled with the heavy metals, like we talked about with chocolate bars and cadmium, it turns out that cadmium was found in a lot of the brands of over-the-counter chocolate, and they found that the older cacao trees had more cadmium. Why? Because it's called bioaccumulation. The leaves have the most cadmium in it, and the leaves fall down below the cacao tree, and then they get reabsorbed into the soil. So just like older fish have more mercury, larger fish have more mercury, the older trees of cacao have more heavy metals, and they found a lot of the dark chocolates are filled with cadmium, which is toxic to humans. So I think that one of the things that we might be seeing in the future, especially with the new administration that's into health, is that there'll be independent testing of products and say that this product has been screened for pesticides, for example, and heavy metals like aluminum and arsenic and lead. So I think that's going to be something to also help make America healthy again, to know what exactly is in our supplements, our rice, our food, and our water, especially the bottled water, and even to measure the microplastic amounts and publish that, just like they publish the carbohydrates, how much sugar is in a different food. They should do that with water and tell us what's in the water, what pesticides were found, how much microplastics per milliliter are in there. So these are all things to try to make us healthier again, because the cleaner our soil and our water is, and the closer we can be to the Mediterranean diet, it looks like that those are the people who are the most of the centenarians who get to live to be 100.
Dr. Peter Michalos, I thank you for everything you do to let our listeners live longer, live long and prosper, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks, John, for always getting the truth out, and you can get more information and listen to many podcasts on health to learn more and stay healthy.
The Cats Roundtable.
Joining us this morning is Scott Walter. He's president of the Capital Research Center, and Scott testified before Congress this week on foreign money being influencing our elections, and some of it is being used to go through charities. Scott Walter, can we get proof?
Well, this is the thing, right? Some of these guys are really squirrely. Roy Singham is one of the top ones, and he has been a Maoist since he was a teenager, and despite the fact that he was able to make $750 million off of a business that he built and sold. So obviously America did right by him, but he still hates America, and Maoists are not the most honest people. So the New York Times, however, did a lot of good reporting on his international network, and they say it's hundreds of millions of dollars. that he has poured through a vast network of groups, some of which, of course, are very happy to have riots, incite riots in America, like the People's Forum there in New York City, which is notorious.
How can this happen to us? The word I hear is a lot of these foreigners that are putting money through charities is also, some of it is foreign government money that's being siphoned through them and and they use these people. Is Congress ready to do something? Because if nobody goes to jail, nothing's ever going to be cured.
Well, this is the thing, right? There need to be investigations, and then if people are in fact violating laws, they need to be held accountable. And in the case of the Singham character, after he got his $750 million from the America's fine capitalist system, he races to Shanghai, lives in Shanghai, and starts working, as best anybody can tell, with the military and intelligence apparatus of the Chinese communists. But what they're doing in this country is only possible because our homegrown left has created an amazing nonprofit system where they can do all kinds of political things through nonprofits that are including charities, which, of course, are not supposed to be changing our politics.
Not only are they doing that, is they move it from charity to charity to charity, so it gets lost in the action.
Well, this is the thing, right? The money flows do go from group to group to group, and making it, nearly impossible to trace. It's going to take serious law enforcement and maybe intelligence service work to figure out exactly what's going on. But there's a whole lot of smoke, and it's very hard to believe there's not fire if the full investigative powers are brought to bear.
What else had you tell Congress, and what do you think the solutions are?
The number two guy, I would say, who's a foreigner and bad in this, is a guy named Hans-Jörg Wyss. And he is a Swiss billionaire, and he has given hundreds of millions of dollars to another vast network of nonprofits that's been run by something called Arabella Advisors. And they have charities and political nonprofits, and the money sloshes back and forth. And I said that that's another big problem. And here's the hilarious thing. The Democrats' witness at the hearing, right, the person the Democrats invited to testify alongside the rest of us, had to admit that he, at his entity, Public Citizen, that they had received money from this very same Hans-Jörg Wyss. And they tried to pretend that it's American money because it came from a foundation that Wyss, incorporated in America. But, of course, nobody else has given to that foundation except the Swiss billionaire.
Let me ask you a question. What's in it for him? Does he get a return on his investment someplace? Have they favored him with business? What do you think is in it for him?
Well, his sister wrote this gushing biography of him. And in that biography, what she said is that he wants to fundamentally transform America, like an Obama or Biden's people or on and on. Some billionaires have this crazy idea that they need to change America in these big, profound ways so that we're not so terrible the way we are now. And, of course, they say this even though they're doing extremely well in our system.
The problem is there's a lot of money being spent that if the Republicans lose Congress, then the investigations go away and we're back to where we started from.
Why do you think that?
Well, Scott, thank you for for letting the American people know.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. If you ever miss a segment or want to hear it again, go to WABCRadio.com, go to podcasts, go to minicast, and play back your favorite segment. With us today is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Jason Smith. Mr. Chairman, what else is going on in Washington with your hearings on foreign money affecting our elections?
What we did this week, we had a hearing in Washington, and the hearing is part of our 3-year investigation into non-for-profits. And what we have found, there's, of course, more than 1.5 million different non-for-profits in the nation, but we have found that these nonprofit organizations in the United States, there are several that are fueling violence, chaos, and division within the United States. And we can't allow our tax code, John, to continue to be weaponized against us by foreign governments. We have discovered millions of dollars that are going into these non-for-profit organizations that are linked with ties to the Chinese Communist Party. This is not a movement. It's a major web. They've created a machine that's being subsidized by the American taxpayer dollars, and we got to stop it.
The other thing I hear, and I don't know what that has to do with charity, is that a lot of these monies are going in by foreign governments, and the foreign governments don't really care about tax deductions. They just write the checks or do their duty to their countries.
You're exactly right. The foreign entities will put money into these non-profits so that they're basically shielded. And you can't tell that it's foreign money funding these violent protests that have resulted in criminal activity and people being arrested. Also, you're seeing this money funneled in to just create chaos and unrest. If they can divide Americans, countries like China are cheering. They're successful, and that's in fact what their actions are doing. We're also seeing money flow into terrorist organizations, and this is absolutely unreal and unacceptable.
And I understand it's coming in from the possibly through the Chinese, through that Singapore connection. I understand that Swiss connection, there's money coming in. And I understand some of those characters in New York, it's not only their own money, it's money that's possibly being funneled through foreign governments.
It's coming from foreign governments. But as you know, John, it is illegal for a federal candidate for office, for a president, for a Congress, for the Senate, to accept foreign donations. You can only accept money from U.S. citizens, but we have seen that these wealthy foreign billionaires have found ways to get involved into our political system by putting millions of dollars into these nonprofits that they send to other foundations, and they move around multiple times that ultimately get involved in our elections.
Who in the federal government besides Congress? You're looking into it now. Does the FBI have a division that's watching over these people? Who is responsible for this?
They absolutely. The Justice Department and the FBI, they have influence and power over this and in the investigations. You look at the Judiciary Committee as well and the Oversight Committee in Congress. They have authority. You know, the Ways and Means Committee is not the committee that most people recognize as an oversight committee because, of course, we're over the entire tax code, and we're over all trade, Social Security, healthcare, and most of the welfare programs. But we do have oversight of anything that affects those entities. And when you're looking at tax-exempt organizations, that is what we're responsible for. And that's why we're doing this.
What else would you like to tell the American people?
I have to just compliment President Trump and all that he's doing in bringing down the cost of goods. You have inflation right now, John, that's the lowest. That's the lowest it's been in 4 years. Gas prices, that's the lowest it's been in 5 years. And when it comes to wages have risen in the first year of President Trump more than the prior 4 years combined. These are things that are really big. But the biggest thing right now, John, is that we're in the middle of the largest refund season in the history of America because of the passage of the Working Families Tax Cuts and the big, beautiful bill. You're going to see nearly $400 billion going back to the taxpayers. It will average $1,000 per American, roughly.
Besides that, if President Trump brings down interest rates, gasoline is down to less than $2 a gallon in a lot of states. I don't know about Missouri, But also, if he brings down interest rates, he'll make homes affordable again for younger people.
It absolutely will. Bringing down interest rates will create more affordability for first-time home buyers. What's really sad, John, is that when Trump left office, the average age for a first-time home buyer was 32 years old. Now it is 40. And so it's because of those high interest rates. We got to bring them down. There's a lot of other things that we can do. And the president, he works tirelessly. He does not give up on this. He has an incredible vision. But if you look at the economy, I think this year, John, the economy is going to be one of the best economies this nation has ever seen. If you look at the passage of the big, beautiful bill, the working families tax cuts, the first quarter to follow after that bill was signed into law on July 4th, our GDP was 4.4%. The congressional scorekeepers projected it would be 1.8%. The fourth quarter of last year is projected to be over 5%. The 50-year average from GDP is just under 3%. This year, you're going to even see higher GDP, which is great for our nation.
Mr. Chairman, Jason Smith from the state of Missouri, thank you for coming on, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.
Thanks, John. Always great to be with you. Have a great weekend.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is General Jack Keane, a vice chairman, chief of staff. Well, General Keane, the Munich Security Conference is going on, and it's just a lot of concerns all over the world. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with Iran and what's happening. There's a military buildup that the United States is conducting in the Middle East. It's been reported in the media that there's over 100 C-17, which is our largest aircraft, that have flown sorties into the Middle East with military equipment and soldiers on board. We already have one aircraft carrier and its assorted ships in the Middle East. It's reported that another one is about to be deployed to the Middle East. Two things are driving the movement of these troops. The possibility, obviously, of military action combined with the Israelis, and it would be a very comprehensive campaign, not just a one-off attack. And it has two major parts to it. One is to make certain that the resources we're moving into the region have the defensive capability to protect the U.S. bases and our troops in the region. And number two, to have the capability to protect Israel as well. And what are we talking about? Protect them from what? From two things. Primarily missiles, ballistic missiles, long-range missiles that could be fired at Israel, short-range missiles that could be fired at our bases in the region, and also drones that could likely be fired at the United States bases as well as at the bases in the population in Israel, as it occurred during the 12-day war. So we have to make certain that we can defend against that. But we also, in terms of the offensive capability, John, it would likely be done, and I don't have inside information here, I'm just speculating based on my military experience, that we would likely be targeting civilian and military leadership, also the entire infrastructure that sustains them, the IRGC, which is their military component, the Bassa militia, which is the force that they use to repress the people and kill them in the streets, as we have seen this horrific barbarianism that they've imposed on their own people, and other assorted defense industrial base capability. And then a major focus would take place on their ballistic missiles, which they have recovered some since the 12-day war, which number likely in the thousands and scores of launchers. That would receive a major focus. We're talking about something much larger than what the Israelis did in the 12-day war, but compressed, and also with the United States participating as well. Something that would be quite formidable, that would put the regime clearly on a pathway to regime collapse. And once the shooting stopped, I would assume the people would be in the streets by the hundreds of thousands, once again recognizing how weak what is left over truly is. And I think we would have significant leverage over what is left over as well. Kind of how we have significant leverage in Venezuela today after Maduro was captured and is being brought to a trial in New York City. And obviously the president has yet to make the decision about that military option, but obviously we can see what's taking place. And in my mind, I believe that decision will eventually be made.
General Keane, thank you so much for the update, and thank you so much for everything you've done for our country, and you still work hard for our country. Thank you so much.
John, it's always great talking to you and your audience. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. With us today is Steve Moore, one of the country's second best economists. We joke about that all the time. We call Larry Kudlow the first greatest economist. And Larry Kudlow had Steve had President Trump on this week. Steve Moore, what did you think?
Well, as you know, on Friday, we got a very good jobs report. Blew away Wall Street. Everybody was expecting just a very little bit number of jobs, and instead we got a huge number. You know, we had more people working. Unemployment rate fell. Wages are up. So it's a good picture, and I think people are finally coming around to the realization that this is an economy that is a blockbuster and a lot of prosperity. We, as you know, we crossed the 50,000 on the Dow, which is an amazing achievement. When I first came to Washington in the early 80s, the Dow was at 1,000. So really, I think everything is looking very bright.
I think 2026 is going to be a great year. And the only thing stopping us is if the Supreme Court comes down with something stupid like with the tariffs, because I think what President Trump is doing is keeping things level and making sure that we're getting good deals going back and forth.
Well, I agree. He's a great deal maker, and I don't think it will hurt the economy too much if some of that tariff revenue has to be returned. I think he probably will lose at least a nuanced decision on some of the tariffs. So I think some of the tariffs will be left alone. And you're right, Trump has used the tariffs as a bargaining chip to get lower tariffs abroad that are imposed on us and to get freer and fairer trade. So to that extent, I think that's been a plus for the economy. Then don't forget, John, we have the big, beautiful tax bill that's really kicked in the last few weeks. So people are starting to see more money in their paycheck because less money is being taken out by the IRS. All of these are positive signs.
Anything else you want to tell the American people?
You have a perception out there that the economy is not good, and that's what the polls show. In fact, until recently, Trump was underwater on the economy in terms of people's opinion on things, but it's changing. And so what's happened is the perception is now catching up with the reality, which is that Trump's tax cuts, his deregulation efforts, his pro-American energy policies, which have dramatically increased the supply of energy, and that has brought prices down. Trump's policies are working. There's no doubt about it. And the one thing that we need to do is just make sure these policies stay in place and then the public gets behind them. We've got these big midterms coming up, and I think as we approach November, people will feel much better about the economy than they do right now.
What other problems could come up? I mean, the stock market is over 50,000. I made a prediction that it could hit 60 by December 31, 26. What is your gut feeling?
Well, I'll tell you what Donald Trump is thinking. You know, he said the other day he thinks we can get the Dow 100,000 by the end of his presidency. I think that's a moonshot. But you know what? I love the fact that this guy aims high. And all I'm telling you is that the returns on stocks over the last 40 years, adjusted for inflation, have been 10% on an annual basis, John. So for young people listening to this show, you want to take your savings and put it into an index fund and let it grow with the productivity of the American economy. We are about to enter one of the greatest productivity booms in American history with the advent of artificial intelligence and the increase in robotics that are going to make more and more goods and services at lower and lower costs. So it's a great time to be alive. It's a great time to be an American, and thank God we have a president who is a businessman and understands how things work.
Well, Steve Moore, one of the country's top economists, thank you so much for coming on this Sunday morning, and we'll talk again real soon.
Thank you, John.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is Drea Humphrey, and she's with the bureau chief and reporter of the Director of Rebel News in Canada. And right now she's doing a documentary. And Drea, everybody was so sad that the ostriches were executed. What happened? What are the feelings of the people?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show for this important matter. And you're right. You tried. The Americans tried. I tried as a journalist with my boots on the ground at the farm, staying there for weeks to save these healthy ostriches. Just to remind your audience, these birds, hundreds of them, had never been tested. The ones that were slaughtered on November 6th to the 7th had never actually been tested from the avian flu. A flu had swept through the herd a year prior, before the Canadian government actually called them in a way that even industry insiders as well as animal rights are saying is inhumane. So you tried very hard. Thank you for that. You got the attention of your top medical officials, Secretary of Health. You got the FDA on it, and that actually brought some legitimacy to what the farmers were saying all along is please.
Yes, it was Secretary Kennedy and Dr. Oz and the FDA, and they wanted to test them, and the CFIA in Canada refused to pay attention to Secretary Kennedy.
They refuse. That's our Canadian Food Inspection Agency, our agriculture minister. No one ever explained why they wouldn't just test the birds. And let's not forget the science. These weren't just your regular birds. They're non-poultry. They're prehistoric creatures. They lived for many years. Some of them were over 25 years old. And the farm had transitioned them into promising antibody science. So now that they possibly had, recovered from the avian flu, the argument was, let's save these birds. Let's work with the U.S. on seeing what we can find out from these antibodies to fight the avian flu so that maybe we don't have to mass call farms and livelihoods while we're at it.
They refused to test the animals. They refused to talk to anybody. They refused to talk to the American ambassador. They refused to talk to Secretary Kennedy.
It seems more and more, when an agency, the government, can seize private property, take control of private animals, block independent journalists from trying to capture it effectively, block independent testing, do all of this without having to give any explanation. Questions need to be asked. That's why we're doing a documentary probing into why was the answer no? Why did these birds have to die? And we have recently found out that the Canadian government spent $6.7 million at least to do this call during a time where they could have said, hey, let's get a deal. There's some trade tensions. Let's work with our neighbors, our friends in America to explore this avenue. And while we're at it, let's save these birds. So we're getting to the bottom of why. That's what I was out interviewing you for recently, so that we could show the people, A, why this mattered to you, which I felt like the media didn't do a great job of doing.
So you're working on a documentary that's going to be, when will it be finished? And where is it going to be showing?
Right now, I'm at our capital. I'm in Ottawa. We're hoping to have it finished. Hopefully, I don't want to say for sure, but by next month. We've been running around across the country internationally. You can find out the information of that at our website called ostrichfarmdocumentary.com. I think it's going to be quite the eye-opener.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we'd love to distribute it in the United States and help you out on that, because the people of America, and when I say America, I mean Canada and the United States, have to know the truth because there's so many things happening.
Agreed. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. With us today is Lynn Shaw. How do we protect our children? Lynn, what's up today?
I want to talk about something that is hiding in plain sight in millions of American homes. This new report just came out warning us that boys are being introduced to gambling, not in casinos, but on the couch. after school through video games that they're playing every day. Listen, we just watched the Super Bowl. That is the largest single betting day in the United States, and we saw that they were partnering openly with their online gambling sites, their commercials, their ads, all of that, and that same gambling culture of betting and taking a chance is bleeding straight into games. So according to new research, because we're always, well vetted from our great colleagues at Common Sense Media, they put out a report that more than 1 in 3 boys ages 11 to 17 say they have gambled in the past year. And this is starting an addiction. For many, it starts this gambling style. The features are built right in, again, into their video games. And you may think it's very harmless. Parents also think, the kids are quiet. They're in the family room. They're perhaps in their bedroom, the kitchen table. They're playing games. But this harm is pervasive. It is getting that brain, that young brain, ready for gambling, for a lifetime perhaps of addiction. So there's a lot of risk going on here, and we have to talk about, this exposure inside the video games. We have so much to think about, but you know what? They're learning in the video games. There are things called loot boxes, skin cases, gotcha pulls, where they're exchanging virtual monies, and also in some of these games, real currency. And they'll receive a random, virtual item they're buying or character, and it's kind of like a digital, think of it like a digital slot machine built into a video game. So what we have to talk about here is, even though parents think, they don't recognize it like we're talking about, this is actual gambling, it absolutely is. And we already know from our research, the algorithms. It is the job of big tech right now. There's no regulation with big tech as of right now in 2026. Their job is keeping the eyeballs, keeping everybody online, creating those ads, making money. But I have to, kids also, John, they're maybe not even looking for these gambling sites or games, but they'll pop on to something. That plays into the algorithms we're always talking about, those dangerous algorithms that are feeding kids content that they shouldn't see, because we know that the adolescence, the brain, this is a very sensitive period, and kids are, impulsive, and they're going for the reward and risk. It's training their brain. And we're talking about gambling and the risks to their behavior and adult kind of patterns they're forming now. This is far more popular with boys than girls. And families, again, some of the boys are reporting their families are even playing these games with them. And we're not judging them, but they're not understanding that they're setting up their children for a future of addiction. So we want to recommend some practical steps. We've got to talk about it. Number one, we have to talk to our kids about gambling mechanics, like what it looks like, video games, and explain to them. We've got to also, all of these sites have parental controls, and yes, they make it very difficult to enact them, but most of these gaming also, you have to put a credit card on to buy things. They require passwords. So adults, we're not judging here, we're educating you. Don't leave a credit card on any site for a child to constantly use it and add into their loot box or use it to buy more gaming. And passwords, right?
Yes.
Understand, if your child's on a game, create the password with the child and do everything together. And also, understand what they're playing. Sit and watch with your child. I'm even talking to teenagers, which can be a little more difficult, but they want us to be part of their lives. They want us to sit and play these games with them. So sit and do it and understand what they're exposed to, but also limit time, John, spent on games.
Lynn, we're out of time. Give us your website again.
Absolutely. Lynn'sWarriors.org. Protect our children, because there is a war on for our kids in America.
Thank you for what you're doing, and God bless you. God bless America.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. Every Sunday morning, we'll bring you the latest in what's happening in our community, our country, and the world. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a nice Sunday.